Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 4th, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting. Following the guidance by the state in 2020 regarding open meeting law, this meeting, as you are all well aware, is being held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate are doing so utilizing Zoom technology conferencing. There is a link to the Zoom meeting on the agenda, which can be found on our website. And there is also a phone number in which participants wishing to participate may do so. The first item of business is a roll call vote of the Board of Selectmen. So I will start. Robin Hunter, present.
Bob Stringett, present.
Jeffries, present.
The first item on our agenda is citizens' comments. And are there any comments? Okay, there being none, let the record show we are ahead of schedule for now.
Now,
John, no talking.
That's not going to last very long.
Right, well, so the first item on our business is Mark Waldman, who's going to make a presentation regarding the town funds. And is he on, Carl? Should we move to, we're a little early.
So somebody just checked in.
Connecting now.
Yeah, so see if that's Mark. So Mark, are you on? So it doesn't look like he is on, Robin.
All right, so then I suggest we go to the Warren Committee recommendations on the annual town meeting warrant. And then when Mark joins us, we can go back to his agenda item, if that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so why don't we go there? And Melissa, welcome to the meeting. Melissa Herman, the chair of the Warren Committee, is here this evening. And I believe you are going to present your recommendations to the board.
Yes, thank you for the invitation to come tonight. We also have Cam Hudson here tonight, who is the vice chair of the warrant committee for this year. And I know this is something we haven't done in the last few years, but we were happy to have the invitation. And so our plan was to go through the articles one by one with a brief summary of our recommendations. This would essentially be a summary of what would be included in the blue book that will be mailed out to citizens shortly. Is there anything else you were hoping to have from us in this presentation?
No, that would be perfect. It gives us insight as to, you know, your deliberations and where you, not you personally, but the Warren Committee have potential concerns.
Okay, great. So in general, in cases where the warrant committee recommends, it would be unanimous within the group. So our process is throughout the fall and winter to liaise with the town and the various departments and sponsors of various articles in order to hear their presentations, review the information put forward, and then once everything has been shared at open hearing, we then have a conversation or deliberation about each of the articles. We vote on the articles, and then we introduce a summary, which we include in the blue book, which again is mailed to everyone this time of year and also available at the annual town meeting. And so going in order with these, the first one, Article 1, which is to hear and act on the various reports of the various committees. We would recommend that would be called over in the meeting, and we would further recommend, if there's no objections, the reports be accepted and placed on file. That is a typical recommendation for us. On Article 2 for the salaries for elected officials, again, would recommend that this article be read and approved. For Article 3, and this is funding the use of revolving fund accounts with specific amounts that are itemized here. We also recommended that this article be approved. We then moved on to Article 4, which is the operating budget for the town. This is where the majority of our time has been spent in terms with various department requests and the combination of all of the different budgets. And for that, we also recommended that this be approved.
Were there any particular departments that were the subject of more discussion and concerns, or for the most part, were you pleased with what was presented?
So I think for us, one thing we always look at is just additional staffing requests year on year, and departments that are growing from one fiscal year to the next, and look to understand those differences, and also to the extent where we can also know how current year spending is trending, how much of a difference it would be year on year. One of the reasons we approved the total Article 4 proposal was because in aggregate, it was less than 4% increase, but part of what made that total increase what it was that the school's budget was relatively small increase year on year. Part of that was influenced by Dover's share being reduced for this upcoming year. And so that did offset some increases in some other departments. One that we discussed in particular was highway, and some of the hiring that was proposed for that. In some cases, it is related to replacement hiring. In some cases, it's related to net new. So I think in aggregate, it was something we were comfortable with. But knowing that individual line items will be read out at the meeting, we were comfortable.
Okay, and I know specifically for highway that also one of the hires was really a replacement of an outsourced position. So I'm glad that you spent time talking to highway, because there was a lot of conversation about that line item at the open hearing. And once you started digging into it, it was a little different than.
Yeah, I think that's where us looking into how this year, not this year's budget versus next year's budget proposal, but this year's actual, like, understanding in some cases there have been some staffing changes, and we're kind of getting back to a level or doing some swaps that eventually become more comfortable.
Right. And you know, the other thing, I forgot my train of thought because a text came in. The other thing is we had issues replacing staff during COVID. And so sometimes the lag was much larger than we had anticipated. So you got this temporary decrease in spending in one year, and then it just went back up to normal. But it's important because most citizens are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to look at the change. So it's great that you guys looked into this and have answers.
Okay. Great. And then moving on to Article 5, then this is another area where we spent a significant amount of time this year, as there are a number of recommended items from various departments in this year's capital budget request. And so we do have 2 members of the warrant committee that are also participating on the capital budget committee. So that's certainly helpful in staying informed, but capital budget did also come and present to us twice. And we also spoke with a number of the departments in their presentations as well. And so in the end, we reviewed all of the items. Our recommendation at this time is in line with the recommendation of the capital budget committee, which is to approve all of the items. In a similar type of commentary, to Article 4, some of the things that we spent a little bit more time on was just because of the size of the investment in the engine #1 rescue pumper of nearly $1 million. We did ask more questions of fire and also capital budget to understand that one before approving. Another one that we wanted to understand more about was the project relating to Claybrook, and seeing some of the estimates on that and eventually getting that to the final amount, which we're recommending, which is $1.5 million. And so in our perspective, this is a project that would definitely need to move forward. It's something harder to deprioritize given the urgency of what is happening with that road. And so we did recommend that as well. And then the other large item that we spent time on, both with capital and also with the regional school committee, was the recommendation relating to the HVAC unit. We did in the end recommend to approve Dover's share, which is $647,400 for those rooftop HVAC units.
Melissa, with regards to the analysis that you did on the fire engine and the roll-on, roll-off vehicle, what type of due diligence did you do with regards to replacement and availability of replacement parts for specifically for engine 1?
So for that, the warrant committee did not specifically engage in detailed analysis of replacement costs and things like that. We very much leveraged the deep due diligence that the capital budget committee did do. And so with that, this was something we heard from them on 2 different presentations. They did a field visit on it as well. And then we also had the fire chief come and speak with us about the need.
And so you didn't feel any due diligence was warranted with regards to a cost benefit analysis?
And as we discussed at the last meeting, we did hire the Collins Center.
I wasn't asking you the question, Robin. I was asking it to Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
So due diligence specifically performed by the warrant committee? No. Yes. We very much leveraged the analysis that was done and the work that was done by Barry Goldman and his committee.
And both you and Cam serve on that committee as representatives.
Correct. Cam, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's difficult for us to separate our work in the capital budget committee from the warrant committee, so we've got to sort of think a little bit carefully there. But we did spend a lot of time discussing this in the capital budget committee. We did 2 separate visits to the fire department, and we spoke with multiple representatives from the department on that. And we came to the conclusion that the problem with that main fire truck is that it's so critical to so much of the day-to-day work of the fire department, where it's the machine that goes out all the time. And it also carries some equipment that is really critical in car accidents and so on. So that was something that we did take into account. The other thing, of course, is the age of the machine and the difficulty of getting parts. And there is the risk of us not being able to get parts for it, and then other equipment that is less useful in that initial engagement would need to be used. So I think in general, we agree with the request of the fire department and the recommendation of the capital budget committee for those reasons.
Did you speak to any of the vendors who supply parts to those the vehicle that's in service?
No, we didn't, but we we did work with the interim town administrator to try and get a more general evaluation of the whole needs of both the fire department and of the highway department. The trouble is that we are not specialists in understanding the maintenance of equipment. And so we decided that it would be better, or recommended to the interim town administrator, to do a more broader study on the actual machinery to work out what the best course of action is going forward. We didn't think that justified us not acquiring this equipment, seeing it was so essential.
And we also reviewed maintenance records from the fire department, which they were able to supply to us. And on those, we understood, given the time lag to repair them, that it was very difficult for them to get some of these parts, which is understandable given the age of the machine. We also agreed with the Board of Fire Engineers as well as the fire department that for fiscal year, I think it's 2025, we will work to have an outside vendor look at all the equipment in the fire department and do a feasibility study to give us better metrics on whether or not the pieces of equipment we have are appropriate, and when it's deemed to be appropriate to replace those, given what standard useful lives are. Again, that doesn't mean that we're going to replace them when their useful life is as defined is up, but it just gives us a benchmark and a tool similar to the tool that we have available to us with our buildings, which is basically the capital needs assessments reports from On-Site Insight Group. The other thing,
very well familiar with it. I just am very deeply troubled by the fact that you didn't do a lot of due diligence with the existing. There are 14 vendors that are qualified to service the vehicle that's in force. Over 3,700 of these vehicles are currently in force at approximately the same age. They're in service every day. Parts are available in mass from several distributors here in Massachusetts and New England. The vehicle, the body of the vehicle, the engine of the vehicle are serviced also in New England. And I am deeply troubled, very disturbed that you didn't do some of the very basic cost analysis and due diligence that anyone would do with regards to this type of purchase.
Well, I take
I just
exception
don't
to
think
what
that's
you
been our
said,
practice.
because the capital budget does extensive due diligence. We
Robin, you
also
heard somebody say they did not speak to a single vendor.
right, but John, we have qualified individuals running the fire department. We
Who
need to
didn't speak to a
rely
single
on the
vendor?
information that they provide us with.
If I may also comment, one of the real problems, there might be some parts available. I would be very skeptical of the notion that all the parts that this machine might need
Did you speak to a vendor?
to operate.
You already answered that question. You didn't
in the
speak
last
to a
year,
vendor.
Right,
the
the
machine was
fire
out of service for
department did.
5 weeks
Did you
as
speak
a
to
result
a
of the
vendor? Asked the question,
unavailability
you
of
said
parts.
no.
So I think that's a pretty good evidence of that.
The tone of this conversation is inappropriate. I understand your position. We, as a committee, did not speak to vendors. We relied on the fire department. We rely on the experts in the
How
town
can
to
that be
provide us
inappropriate?
with proposals.
How can that be inappropriate? This is exactly what we do.
John, your tone is inappropriate right now.
My tone is not inappropriate,
Yes,
Robin.
it is.
Your responses, you're taking this as
John,
personally.
John, we are
Don't
moving to
interpret
the
what my
next
tone is.
item.
Do not interpret what my tone is. I'm asking very simple
John,
questions.
this is a civil conversation and we gave you an answer. it is clear that you disagree with the approach that was taken, and that is duly noted. So we are going to move on and allow Melissa to continue with her conversations with her presentation, unless you have other questions
Thank you.
related to this
You can
item.
move to the next item.
We need to pick up the pace too.
Right.
Okay. So we'll say that was Article 5 then. Because we have 30 in total. So resuming with the articles, a number of these are typically consent agendas. So Article 6 was the one about the regional school capital request. Article 7 is related to that based on the final budgeting. We expect that one will be withdrawn. Article 8 is related to funding the unemployment compensation fund. So we are recommending that sum of 10,000 be raised and appropriated this year. Article 9 is related to the payment of accumulated sick leave for retired police officers. Also recommending the sum of 10,000 be raised and appropriated this year. Article 10 is the sum of money for highway construction, reconstruction, and other improvements under the Massachusetts general laws as funded by the state budgets. And so, again, we approve that this be, we recommend that this be approved for this year. The next article, this is also a recurring article regarding the Conservation Commission for the town to vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money for the Conservation Fund to be used by the Conservation Commission. We did recommend that the sum of 25,000 be raised and appropriated this year. For Article 12, the next one regarding the to raise and appropriate a sum of money for the General Stabilization Fund in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 5B. We, based on the model that had been developed and reviewed last year, the amount of 170,300, we're recommending that be raised and appropriated this year. For Article 13, which is related to the Regional Schools Committee and the DS Regional Schools Stabilization Fund, this is annual contribution relating to the OPEB or the other post-employment benefit liability that is currently outstanding. And so the recommendation there was 721,000. We also recommended that be raised and appropriated. Again, this is in line with the model developed last year. For Article 14, this was a Board of Selectmen article relating to funding specific projects. This is one-time projects. The amount that was proposed this year at open hearing was 125,000 to hire a consultancy to assist in designing and implementing website enhancements. This would be an extension of the project of the new town website from 2020. For this one, we did vote to recommend. The vote on this one was not fully unanimous. It was 5 for, 3 against. The reason for that split is not seeing enough information in terms of quotes and information around specific elements of the project. But in the end, as a group, we did vote to recommend. Again, 5-3-0 for that one. Article 15, this is a standard article regarding unpaid bills at the time of the open hearing, and still as we expect the Blue Book to go to press, the amount is 5,115. We did recommend that be raised and appropriated for this year's meeting. Article 16, this is supplemental appropriations. We had anticipated that this one would be withdrawn, so we did not vote on this one. The next one, Article 17, this was Parks and Recreation around equipment. related to the future Carroll Community Center. Also expected that this one would be withdrawn and potentially added to the special town meeting in June. So we did not vote or make a recommendation on Article 17. Article 18, this was the zoning bylaw amendment regarding the floodplain district map. For this one, as with the other ones, we had a presentation from the planning board on this, also had the detailed presentation at open hearing, which did incorporate many of our questions as well as feedback from other stakeholders in the town. And so this one we did recommend to be approved. Article 19, this is the accessory apartment or ADU. This would also be a planning board recommended amendment to the zoning bylaw. Also in this case, we had multiple conversations with this board, and after their presentation, we recommended it be approved. Article 20 is Conservation Committee. There are amendments to the Dover General Bylaws, Chapter 181, regarding the Dover Wetlands Protection and also notices and hearings. The notices and hearings component really is to streamline procedure and not require quite so many copies as we were in the past, and other minor changes here to wording. So this one, after hearing this, we were comfortable recommending. The second change on that was also related to removing the cap on fees for outside consultants should there be a study required. So the full Article 20, we did recommend. Article 21, this is an amendment to the town's general bylaw regarding gas and plumbing inspectors. And so in this case, the adjustment would allow for a wiring inspector and one gas and plumbing inspector rather than a wiring inspector and one or more deputy wiring inspectors. So based on the recommendation and the presentation on this, we recommend to approve. Moving into some of the other bylaw amendments, this one is Article 22 from the town clerk. And so this is relating to how town constables are elected. There is a proposal here regarding the 3-year terms, beginning with the 2025 town election and setting that cadence going forward. This we recommend to approve. The next one is Article 23, which is regarding the Finance Committee on Roads. And so the proposal for this is that to fully dissolve the committee has not been active. At this point, we agree and we recommended that article be approved. The next one, Article 24, similar. This is for the Tree Committee and amending the town's bylaw regarding that committee, and also that this would be formally no longer in existence. One thing we did note with this is that there still are ways for individuals to be able to provide feedback under the purview of the tree warden. So with that, we recommend to approve. The next Article 25, which is relating to the Capital Budget Committee, similar to the article on the constables, this article sets out to really define the composition of the committee and how different members are added to the committee over time. There was one small suggestion that we had requested or suggested relating to the wording on this one. It was a little unclear that we would have 4 members on revolving terms, but only add 1 replacement per year. So there will be likely a small amendment on this one just for clarity, but we did recommend to approve the article with that expected adjustment. Article 26 is authorizing the town treasurer collector to charge for each written demand. This was one that we did receive a little bit more information on from the selectmen, so we appreciate that. Basically today, Dover is charging $5 per demand letter should there be overdue tax bills that are due to the town. This would be the steps that are necessary to be taken in order to raise that amount, but still not to exceed the limit set by Massachusetts general law. And so we did recommend for that to be approved and the amount to be approved at the town meeting. Article 27, Capital Budget Committee, also similar to some of the other committees that I'd mentioned before. There is a proposal to amend the town's general bylaw about the long range planning committee. This committee has not met for almost 4 years at this point, and so we would recommend that the article to dissolve this committee and update the bylaw be approved. The next article, 28, this was a citizen's petition. For this one, the petition was brought forward regarding a sidewalk on Cross Street at the intersection of Cross Street and Center Street, really helping to facilitate safety near the Chickering Elementary School. For this one, we did work with the petitioner, had presentations also at the open hearing. As a committee, we did recommend that this one not be approved with a vote of 0, 8, and then 1 abstention. The primary reason for that is that at this time, we didn't have a cost estimate on the potential project. We did not have enough information around whether or not the property owners that would be impacted by this sidewalk would be willing to participate in this project and potentially yield part of their property in order to facilitate it. So it felt from our perspective early to be able to recommend it when there were still so many unknowns. So that again, this is one that we are recommending to not be approved. Article 29, this is the free cash related article. The proposal this year was 1.2 million. We are recommending that this be approved. Again, this is in line with the model that has been developed and presented last year. The one stipulation we would have on that is that this assumes that everything else is approved. And so part of our role and part of why we do rely on capital budget and some of the other committees to do a little bit more of the deep reporting and analysis, and then we look at things together in aggregate. This article is a perfect example of that. Is our recommendation on the 1.2 million is subject to everything else and all of the uses that are laid out here being approved in total. And then the last article we had is relating to terms and other information that will be included on the upcoming ballot for town offices, and that we also recommended to be approved. So that is the total in aggregate. There is more information that we're including in the Blue Book. The structure of the Blue Book is typically the language that's proposed. Then we do a write-up summary. Basically in the example, I'll give the example of the one regarding the gas and plumbing inspector. If it's saying we're replacing this with this, we will do a brief write-up that explains what it was and what it will be. And then below it, we have our recommendation. And if there ever is a split on it, we include the actual count of the vote.
Thank you. So when can people expect the Blue Books? When are they going out?
So we are on the final version right now. So we have it in fully formatted with the printers. And so they should be going out, I believe, in the next week. And so the goal is for them to have them before the meeting on May 1st, and then we'll also bring copies to the meeting. They'll
Well-
also be posted in PDF form on the website. So we've been working with the town clerk to make sure all of the presentations that were shared at open hearing, which in some cases were preliminary, are posted on the town meeting website. And then any additional materials will be added there as well.
Well, you've certainly been busy.
Say, Melissa and Cam, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I saw Mark was here.
Oh, yeah, I just want to ask a quick question before Melissa leaves. One of the things I had hoped we could talk about with Melissa here and with the board is those articles that we think could fit under the consent agenda. And therefore, we could it would just be a motion on all of them to adopt. And that would be helpful because if there's agreement, then I can structure the motion that way.
So it looks like we're proposing Article 8, 9, 10, and 11 to be included in the consent agreement. And agenda in 21, 22, 23, and 24.
Well, that's what I've put on the table. Those other ones are, and let me just see if I can.
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Springett because I know he's worked really hard on this. So
I think the ones that have been highlighted and the ones that we've been talking about in the town meeting planning. I mean, the idea was to take what is sort of routine, normal administrative work and put them in the consent agenda. Dave, the ones that are highlighted in yellow look pretty good to me.
Yes, there are a couple of questions I have. I'm wondering if 8 through 11 should be one motion because they're not bylaws. And while I believe it's all simple majority, if you try and put too much into a consent agenda, it's going to get bogged down and then it may fail. So instead of having to then back up and go through them one by one, I'm wondering if breaking it up makes sense. Carl, Jim, and I have a meeting on Thursday, Carl.
Yes.
And we'll go through this because we just want to make sure that anything that's put together has to have the same vote requirement, majority, 2/3, or one of these has actually got 4/5. So there's little details like that we'll go through. I would like to hear everyone's opinion on, do you think that 8 articles in one consent agenda like this that are so varied might run into trouble?
Dave, I would have thought there would have been 2, right? The ones covering 7, 8, 9, and then the ones sort of down the bottom. I would have had it as 2 different. I would have 2 consent agendas covering each.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Bob. So again, Jim gets obviously a major say in this, but I just wanted to get everyone's opinion. And thank you. I didn't hear anything contra.
Yeah, but Dave, I think you're right. You have to worry about the voting requirements of each of the individual acts, and I think we did talk about that.
Yes.
And they're all majority. These 8 all are majority votes.
Carl, the history in this town, if I could just throw it out there, is that any bylaw change goes under 42 microscopes consecutively at town meeting. So I just would love to have one consent agenda, clean that up, and then if the bylaw changes start running into opposition, we can go through them one by one without having to redo quite literally all the items on the consent.
no, I think based upon our history, that makes sense, in my opinion, to have 2.
Yeah, and Jim and Dave have really the historians on this one.
And then let me ask you just one related question. In terms of when, and this, I'm not sure if this is for these 2 boards or for the moderator, when you would like the first consent agenda motion to come up. I was thinking after Article 6, which is the last capital article. So we've done the budget, we've done capital. And then at that point have your first consent item, which as you explained, it should be 8, 9, 10, 11 come up. Does that make sense?
Yes, housekeeping.
Yep.
Especially the one for dismissal. Anything that's going to be recommended for dismissal, you can just put that right up front.
Yeah, I think our thought was grouping the 3 for dismissal and then doing 8 through 11 together.
Yep.
And you're saying wait on item 6, wait on item 7. So after 5, go out of order.
Well, I think after 6, because
After 6, John.
6 is a capital item.
Right. You just had 5 earlier.
And I was, if I understood that, so I was drafting it as the dismissals were going to be their own consent grouping. Since there is no motion brought forward, the motion is to dismiss it, not an affirmative motion like in the other ones. So I had 8 through 11 as a consent. 2 or 3 for dismissal. I'm still looking at 16, whether that can be dismissed or not. And then if I hear you right, you'll also consider 21, 22, 23, and 24 as consent. But
But another nice part of it is we can put that later on in the order where they were. So people aren't constantly flipping back and forth.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay.
Could we add 25 to that possible consent? Because that's just to amend the general bylaw for committee membership for the capital budget.
People may want to ask about that.
Matt? It makes sense to me, Robin, but again, that's for town council and Carl and Jim.
Article 25 may have an amendment at the town meeting based on the language around how members are brought on in the 3-year cycle.
And Melissa, I'm going to ask the moderator and assistant moderator when we meet on Thursday whether that requires an amendment or just a main motion. Well, the correction that you suggested makes sense. I drafted it as just part of the main motion, and I'll confirm that with the moderator if that's acceptable or not.
Okay.
And then we can decide.
But that might be a reason to keep that one separate then, right?
Yeah, I just think that might get an eyebrow raised.
And what about the amendment for the general bylaw for the long range planning? Is that not included in there for the same reason?
Which number, Robin?
27.
That's to actually to dismiss or to do away with that. Long range planning is just, let me think about that. That's the one for capital, right? To add.
So I think this, right, because I think typically is this the one where
A member of long range planning sat on a capital budget committee.
Actually, let me look it up. I have the motions in front of me. I'm sorry.
And when we eliminated the long range planning committee.
right, so it kind of ties into 25.
It does. It's all part of the history.
Right.
So 27 is actually to delete that bylaw, which is the long range planning committee bylaw, to delete that in its entirety. So there's no amendment. There's no, the motion is to delete it from the town's general bylaws.
So it's delete versus amend, and therefore it should be separate.
Not necessarily.
I'm sorry, that was a question, Carl. I thought that's the point you were making. I guess not.
No, I just thought because I just left it because it's related to the change in the capital committee.
Yeah, so by eliminating the long-range planning committee, you eliminate a member. And they didn't want to eliminate the member, so they wanted to change the member from a member of the long-range planning committee to an at-large member.
Right, so that's 25.
Right.
Is expanding the capital committee to have a fourth at-large member.
Right.
Then what's 27?
Eliminate the long-range planning committee.
Okay.
Right.
I just think we're dreaming on the town meeting going through these bylaw changes and saying, but maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe this is the best way to do it. Who knows? We're going to find out.
Well, we can talk more on Thursday when we meet with the moderator.
Do you need us to vote on these, Carl, or?
No, it doesn't require a vote. It's because these are all the motions are made by the warrant committee, so they have to
Okay.
be comfortable. But if we can all get on the same page, including the moderator, I think, that just helps me in drafting the motions. But it sounds like what I'll convey to the moderator is one motion, consent motion for 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Yep.
One for the 2 or 3 articles to be dismissed. And then possibly a third consent around 21. It could go up to 27, but we can 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, not 26, but 27, possibly. So that gives us something to work with, I guess. That feedback's helpful.
Okay. So then I guess we're gonna go back to item 1.1, and the interim treasurer collector, Mark Waldman, is going to make a presentation. And this is based upon an inquiry by Mr. Jeffries at the last meeting.
So, hello, everyone. Nice to finally meet folks. I'm assuming everybody is, well, obviously you appointed, so you're aware that starting next week, or actually starting Thursday or tomorrow, I'll get sworn in as the new treasurer. So my role will be shifting and then eventually eliminated. But Carl had approached me indicating that there had been some questions, particularly coming out of the turbulent week or so around the closure of Silicon Valley Bank, and sort of, is there exposure in our banking relationships in our cash portfolio? Just a little quick background. I don't know how much any of you know about my background, but I was a treasurer in your neighbor town of Wellesley for about 32 years. So I was somewhat, familiar with the whole cash management operation for a municipality. I have to say, basically, overall, the way the cash has been managed in the town, and particularly in regard to the sheer number of bank accounts that existed, has been troubling to me since day one. So sort of one of my goals has been to sort of look at what all these roughly 25 to 30 bank accounts are for, and see if I could, begin to work towards possibly reducing the number. And obviously by reducing the number of accounts, we reduce the number of exposure to any kind of bank failure. And the other thing, and this has taken me a good deal of time, was that when I got there, we had no online access or online ability to look at any of these accounts and to transact any business in any of these accounts. So I've spent a good deal of time just trying to get sort of that set up so that I can see and move monies and even wire funds in a much more automated and expeditious way than what I believe existed before, certainly based on what I could find when I got there. So I can't comment a lot about the security of all these banks. I don't know all of the sort of fundamentals. Obviously, we do business with a number of very large institutions. In this environment, there's obviously been a bias moving towards the large institutions. I can tell you we didn't have any funds in Silicon Valley Bank, or I'm drawing a blank on what the other one that failed here was.
Signature.
But
Signature.
there was, right, Signature. There was no town funds. I mean, I had a concern, obviously, with Silicon Valley because they had a fairly substantial presence in the region because of their purchase of Boston Private Bank some number of years ago. But the Boston Private Bank, as far as I knew, was never a big player in the municipal marketplace. And we clearly did not have any funds there, or certainly not over the last couple of years of anything I could see. So what I've done is simply lay out all of the accounts that I was able to identify, which I believe is probably all of the accounts, possibly except one, which is a very small account. The balances, obviously, in this world, anything over $250,000 is not going to carry FDIC protection. And as you can see from the chart, we have a very significant number of accounts that have that kind of exposure. I can tell you the one thing I have tried to do, I added when I first got there, I added one account, and that's something called the MMDT, which is the Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust. It is in effect a mutual fund sponsored by the state treasurer's office. They go out and they engage a manager. They make the fund available to all municipalities, all state authorities and agencies. It is a very large fund, probably 40 billion, 20 to 40 billion, somewhere in that range. And even though it's not insured per se, any one municipality, if there were to be a loss of an underlying investment in the MMDT, that would be spread over the whole pool. So any one entity's exposure to any single loss would be extremely small. And it is professionally managed, not by the state treasurer contracts out for a firm to manage that. For the first 30 years of its existence, it was Fidelity. And it's been somebody else since then. So I have moved a good bit of money and activity over to MMDT. Been in the process. You'll see in the notes a couple of accounts that I have closed, a couple of others that I will leave for Kyle, my successor, a notation that I think he should probably close. One of them, Harbor One, is a CD that matures sometime in June. My recommendation would be to just take those funds and move them to MMDT, and eliminate that bank from the portfolio. A couple of banks are what we would call our operating banks. Citizens handles our payroll. Rockland Trust handles our accounts payable. Obviously, we have very substantial monies in BY Van Mellon, which includes OPEB. You guys had talked about the stabilization funds going in there. That's managed by UBS. Bartholomew has several large amounts. The biggest one, obviously, being the proceeds from the borrowing for the Carroll building, the Carroll across the street, that, as you well know, we haven't been able to expend. So, but those have been parked there, and a lot of those are that we have those monies invested in sort of in relatively conservative government agencies, or treasury bonds, treasury notes. So most of that stuff is you would call protected in that way. So I really, if you have questions, I can do my best to answer. Again, a lot of this, almost all of it, except MMDT, I was there when I got there, and it's just been my effort to try and grasp and understand. I think the philosophy before was one that for many individual functions, there should be a unique bank account, which is a philosophy I do not maintain. I mean, that's the purpose of an accounting general ledger system, not a banking system, but that seems to be what sort of the underlying philosophy was, and that's kind of the reason there are so many of these individual accounts. So with that as background, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
So Mark, thank you for this, and certainly I gave you the background and the setup with regards to the Bloody Monday as it related to the failure at Boston Private Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Carl was the second phone call after my interview on Bloomberg. So so this is topical, and this is really critical information. And thank you for the time and energy and effort that you've put into this. Quite frankly, this was something literally I worried about from Friday afternoon when Boston Private Bank failed to Monday morning when Janet Yellen gave us a gift that deposits would be covered. So we're at risk at many, many, many banks. And this is a risk that we really have to address. And it's a risk that we have to figure out how to mitigate. So thank you for this, and thank you for the time to putting it together. Just the first questions from me, Mark, is Bartholomew. What exactly is the loan that the bonding that we received, and is Bartholomew the agent for the Commonwealth for the bond, and is Bartholomew an intermediary, or is just that the agency that we went through for that bond?
No, they are purely an intermediary. They're an investment house. They do business. They partner with Commonwealth Financial, huge operation, I believe, out of Waltham. I think they're, but no, they are purely an independent investment advisor. So if we looked at the underlying makeup of that fund, that as well as the capital stabilization and the OPEB, the regional school districts OPEB stabilization fund, we've just got those parked in, as I said, series of treasuries. I'd have to go into looking more specific, some agencies probably. So yeah, they're nothing more than, an investment advisor firm. They do a lot of municipal business in Massachusetts, but
Right.
They don't carry any protection.
How do we? I'm intimately familiar with Commonwealth. They're a broker dealer. They're a intermediary that we stay way away from. I don't know Bartholomew at all. How did we get them? How did they become?
I can't answer, John. Just again, this is where the money was. I'm familiar with Bartholomew from my prior life, my prior 32 years, although I didn't do business with them in Wellesley, not for any specific reason. I just had others that I did business with, but I don't know how specifically they captured this area of the business.
Okay. I know that Dave is on the line watching and listening in as well, and I think I hear his stomach turning.
I think the other thing,
I think it's mine.
So Mark, I'm assuming we have an investment policy and there's directions given to Bartholomew to invest only in government securities.
I've only recently gotten my hands on the investment policy, and it's very old. So it's going to need some tweaking, some serious review and tweaking. Again, I think that'll have to be under Kyle's purview when he can, get to it. But yeah, across the whole thing, I think. The other thing, particularly with the bond proceeds, you need to be aware. You may be that one of the areas where the restriction comes on that is because we borrowed those monies, but didn't spend them because of the problem with the cost of the project were subject to what's called arbitrage under federal IRS rules. So because of that, you want to be very conservative in terms of how those are invested, particularly because any excess earnings, any earnings, investment earnings that would exceed the sort of the interest that we are obligated to pay out, we're subject to rebate to the IRS. So oftentimes, you'll just go purely with low yielding treasury bills, very secure.
They're not so low yielding anymore, Mark.
No, that's true. But at the time, hopefully when this stuff was placed, it was placed for a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Mark,
Yeah.
Mark, what I'm literally sick to my stomach over just looking at this. It's the fact that when you purchase long dated bonds at the time that they purchased long dated bonds, those bonds will have lost money. The 7 or 8 positions that you're looking at could easily be underwater. We could be in a negative with regards to when interest rates rise, bond prices drop. So if the Bartholomew, again, I can't believe that the three fiduciaries of the town don't know, have never met, and have never signed an investment policy statement with a representative of a broker dealer. You're required to do that. You can't have an investment contract as a broker dealer with the Commonwealth without a financial advisory agreement. Dave Havlin is just like I am. He's the owner of and the fiduciary of an SEC registered firm. I know this stuff like I know my own name. Literally, Mark, I am sick to my stomach just looking at this. And
I agree, John. Hey, John, I agree.
But we don't know that such an agreement doesn't exist. We don't know.
We
do not know either whether unless you stated so, Mark, and I didn't catch you, so please forgive me. You didn't say whether these were short-term or long-term treasuries.
Yeah, everything is short-term.
Right.
I can't speak for Dover. In 32 years in Wellesley, we never did anything but hold an investment to maturity. We've never sold on the market. My sense is neither has Dover.
Right.
We're under state law, under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44. Municipalities can only invest maturities. I think it may be up to 3 years now, possibly 5. I don't know what happened in the intervening 2 years when I was out of the business, but
that's right.
You can't invest in anything long term. But you're right. If we needed to sell, we clearly would probably be selling these things at a loss. Again, particularly the bond proceeds fund it's short-term stuff that is low yielding, probably will be rolled over maybe even several times. And we also have our investment, our financial bond advisors who are doing the arbitrage monitoring now. Every month they're getting copies of this stuff on that particular fund. They're asking me every month to provide them with the yields, the makeup, whether anything's been bought or sold. Not that they are going to comment necessarily on the cash management of it, but it is a separate eyes. I just want to draw attention to one other account that we are using. It's called, I got it listed here as multi-bank securities. I want to say it's around $5 or $6 million, which looks a little startling, but what that is, and Jerry did have that in place, that is a service where we are using a company. They happen to be out of Michigan. And what they do is they buy us CDs from all across the country at $240,000. So this multi-bank securities is $5.6 or $7 million, is made up of a slew of bank CDs, but all under FDIC, limits, which is a way for us to, as you can see, I mean, we've got a lot of the Massachusetts banks represented here, and for us to only place $250,000 in every, in only, Massachusetts banks or every bank that we know, it would be incredibly difficult. So using service like this multi-bank securities, where we can, get these CDs with FDIC protection, in fairly substantial numbers. Again, nothing that exceeds a 3-year maturity. Most of it is a 1-year maturity. Again, as far as I'm aware, none have ever had to be sold before, and I'm not aware that there's been any failures. But that's another service that we're trying to funnel some money into to kind of reduce some of the exposure in some of the other accounts and gain at least some FDIC protection. And again, it's extremely difficult to, if you have, this is roughly 30 bank accounts. If we had to get everything with FDIC, we'd have to have 250 bank accounts or 200 bank accounts. And to manage that and to reconcile that would be impossible. It would be just impossible to do. So we have to try between MMDT and services like this, where we can invest larger amounts of money but still have some level of protection. They're very important to us.
So just an FYI, BNY Mellon has a program called CDARS, CDARS,
It's
also
the same
referred
thing.
to as ICS, and it's the same thing.
Yeah,
And
same
you
thing.
And you can, they have long-term or short-term. So they actually have a short-term fund where your money's available to you. As long as you let them know before 3 p.m., you get the money the same day or the next day.
Yeah.
So, that's what I would, we should really, when Kyle starts, look at the investment policy. And I think all of the funds, we're not looking for returns, we're looking for security, especially when it comes to the bond proceeds.
I don't see how one person can do this. I mean, we have a cash management and risk management profile. It seems to me that we should be hiring a professional cash management, risk management firm to make recommendations on how we should do this stuff. I mean, this just blows me away. I mean, John talked about churning his stomach churning on the risk management side. Just saying, oh, Carl's going to do this. I mean, I just don't believe it. I mean, I think we, just like we brought in who helped us on the financial side,
Sarah Hunter and
I think we need to bring somebody in to sort of take this into the 21st century. I mean, this is just an absurd way of, I don't even know how much money we're talking about here.
Oh, just in the quick math, Bob, you're talking about upwards of $30 million because you got $19 million.
Yeah, sitting in the bonds. Yeah, but
just,
I mean, this is just. I mean, John and Robin, you guys are on the financial side. I've never seen anything like this.
This is the nature of most municipalities, though.
That's
Bob.
I've been looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you in Wellesley, I had probably eight bank accounts for $75 million. I did not have this many. And I had at any one time, I had $50-60 million in the MMDT.
Yeah.
Just because I felt that was the safest way to.
We had a banking crisis in 2008, and we just had what we're in the process of one now. I mean, this needs to be updated to the 21st century. And we need to make sure that it's not this kind of complexity is managed by somebody other than one guy sitting in an office on the west side of the building or the east side of the building. I don't even know what the management structure is.
If I may, Madam Chairman.
You may.
Very quickly, my understanding of that FDIC insurance is by registration. So if we've got an OPEB fund, that would have 250,000 of protection. If we've got a student fund, that would have up to 250, et cetera. So there's more protection than might just meet the eye here. Two, I know that a lot of large banks have affiliates affiliates or subsidiaries in multiple states, and therefore you can apply to a program where you can get layers of up to 7 times 250,000 for cash management programs. So just wanted to put it out there that there are ways of doing this. I agree with John. I mean, we look at this every day, but having a consultant perhaps come in and do this to take a look might make sense, which I think is Bob's suggestion and John's suggestion. But I just wanted to quickly let you know that you can get FDIC insurance in other ways than the CD pool.
Right, and I mean, certain banks have DIF, which
Yeah.
covers.
And SIPC and DIF, so that you're right, but you're both right. There are layers of coverage over and above the FDIC, but just this is mind-boggling in terms of the breadth and the scope of just having a conversation with each of these relationships. You're talking about Mark having 32 conversations that would take Mark an entire week just to literally have the due diligent conversations with, show us the agreement, show us what you have. I mean, some of these obviously are pretty easy to explain, and the conversation wouldn't take very long, but there's, as just Bob said, we can't do it this way. We as a firm, and Dave, I know enough about Dave's firm, we would never do it this way. This was just we would never present this to a client as being a fund. There's so many fundamental flaws that you can't even begin to enumerate them. So yes, we definitely should have the three of us should decide this is something we will do. We will do in cooperation with Mark. We will do in cooperation with our new treasurer that we literally just appointed last week. Talk about a baptism by fire. Yes, welcome to the dance.
I've got to figure out how to sort of roll this out to him. That's Phil. I
Yeah, I
haven't
think
quite figured that out.
make sure you have a bucket of water to revive them.
Slowly, very slowly. Wow.
Yeah, this needs to be completely revamped.
Yeah, Mark, wow. So thank you for this. How does it, you've obviously created this. So how do we, where can we sort of view this and get our heads around this so we can do deeper dives and do it, with in whatever way, Mark, that you can make this available to us?
Well, there's the Google Drive, so maybe Mark can put it on the Google Drive and to which we have access. And
That's
then
great.
The structure of it is, you're probably wondering, why did I have the interest earnings? The structure of this was created so that somebody on my staff every month has to post all of these earnings, which is hours of work in and of itself. Not to mention reconciling all these accounts, which hasn't happened for a very long time. So this what you're looking at, I was building simply as a tool so that my staff can go across line and just post the interest into the general ledger that each one of these accounts earn. So it's obviously going to update monthly. That was my intention. Kyle will do what he feels is the best way to do it. But that was my intention. As it is, we need to get posted the July through February interest that you see on the lines, 4 through 13 and all these. So hopefully we'll maintain this, and then we can obviously update the balances at the end of each month as well. And again, the effort will be to continue to attempt to consolidate down, but that's a lengthy process, trying to understand what, particularly with all these smaller accounts, what each smaller account is utilized for, and why did it have to exist as its own bank account?
right, and that was my question, from a statutory standpoint, do some of these, like for instance, OPEB, some of the stabilization funds from a statutory standpoint, do they need to be standalone accounts?
Those should be, Rob, excuse me, just because they get to keep their own earnings, the earnings that they generate stay within that fund, but everything else, payroll, depository, MMDT, multi-bank, all of that stuff just accrues to the general fund. So
So that
they
could
don't
be.
necessarily need to be their own accounts, particularly stupid little things like the school student activities has a checking
Right.
account, student activities savings account. There's no reason that exists.
Right.
Use the general ledger to track both sides of that equation. You don't need a separate bank account. That's the kind of stuff we need to, I mean, that doesn't get at your concern
Right.
of the big bucks, but it gets at the concern of why do we have just so sheer many bank accounts?
Well, just think about $721,000 in a sweep for the lunch program.
They've actually reduced that down. It turns out they were only ever putting money into that account and never any of the expenditures that went out of the school lunch. All those school lunches that got paid for, the money was never taken out of this account. Only the monies that the kids paid for the lunch went into the account. So it's actually, I think I've got a balance down now, like under $130,000 or something. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that just was kind of crazy that I had to figure out why.
Wow. 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 This is.
We need to move on before I hurl
Right,
something.
right. So
I mean,
I
this is
think,
like awful.
Bob's going to pass out. Dave Haviland has had a heart attack, and we have to call, shared services for no.
well, Mark, thank you. And,
Wow.
and, certainly it will be a priority of Kyle to get some help with these accounts. So very much appreciate that.
I think it should be a priority of the board.
Well, the board too, well,
Has to
it's
be.
one and the same.
Yeah.
So why don't we move on? I believe we already took care of item 1.3. So we are on, do we take
1.4.
care of 1.4 as well, Carl? The Board of Selectmen's recommendations on the annual warrant. I think we had that discussion as well.
Well,
Yes or no?
I'm not sure you have.
Okay.
And I know I heard at least on one capital article, I thought I heard some suggestion that at least one individual would not be supportive of one of those capital items. So I think you still need to take positions on formal positions on the articles if you're ready to do that.
I'm good with all but 28, I guess.
Yeah, Carl, aren't we just referring to warrant? It's not the Board of Selectmen. It's where my understanding is the conversation was with regards to warrants presentation and not the Board of Selectmen's.
So that was
Right,
item
yeah.
1.3, I believe.
1.2.
1.2.
So you covered that. Now, if a question comes up in terms of the board's position on any of these, does your position vary on any of these articles from what Warren is saying?
What did Warren do on 28? Did they say no?
28 was no. That was a citizens article.
So I mean, I didn't have any objections to any of their recommendations then.
Right. I didn't either.
No,
I think John had objections to capital.
my objection was from the due diligence. I mean,
Process. It was a process question, right, John?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. It's more of a process question, and we're going to get a lot of, there's going to be it is let me use Robin's words. It is my historical recollection at town meeting when you have capital items, whether it's a copier, which we've had, or a truck, which we've had. People are going to stand up and say, did you do fill in the blank? Have you thought about this? Did you think about that? And from a process standpoint, I know that I can even tell you who the people are who are going to ask those questions.
Well, then we'll have to answer them.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
and there are presentations being prepared by the Board of Fire Engineers and the fire department, as well as the other departments requesting capital.
Yeah, so I don't have any, I'm not taking a position against warrant. I'm not taking a position against the Capitol. I just want to, for us and everybody to be prepared when questions come from the floor that are going to be very specific with regards to due diligence. Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
So, Carl, what do you need for us to move forward?
So,
There's nothing further I need
okay.
from the board. Thank
All
you.
right, so then the next item of business is item 1.5. And this relates to the water study working group. And as you are all aware, we've been working with CDM Smith to put together a water system sustainability study and recommendations. We had an extensive process that was conducted where we reached out to citizens at large, as well as certain departments and committees. And one of the things or the questions that constantly came up that was not answered in the original scope was, is there a way to model how much water is in the aquifer? Is there a way to measure that? And so we spoke to CDM Smith, and this was also confirmed by Ron Myrick, who was on the committee, that one of the ways to do this is to go through a modeling exercise, which is the best proxy for how much water is in the aquifer. And since this was a consistent question that came up from everybody that was part of these focus groups, we asked CDM Smith to give us a proposal to do this modeling, and they provided a proposal of $40,000. At the time, Chris and I talked, and we determined that the ARPA funds could be used for this additional modeling. If we don't move forward with this modeling, there is no way to estimate or try and understand what the capacity of the aquifer is. So we just will not have the answer to the one question that we get over and over and over again. So to complete the study, our recommendation is to move forward with this additional piece.
Would you like a motion?
I can make the motion. I don't know if you have any questions.
I don't.
Make the motion.
Okay, so I move to approve CDM Smith's January 5th, 2023 amendment to the water system sustainability study for services rendered to conducting a technical assessment of the aquifer's resiliency to future conditions. I move to approve the use of American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA funds, to cover the $40,000 cost for services related to CDM Smith's assessment of the aquifer's resiliency to future conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
All right, so the next item of business are Board of Selectmen updates. So the first one is any update on the community center building project?
The the subcontractor bids were received and they're being evaluated.
Okay.
That process is ongoing.
Was there any peaking or no?
Is any what?
Peaking?
I'm at liberty to say that the direction of the subcontractor bids are up. But these guys are going through it with a finer tooth comb. So the general contractor bids are due toward the end of the month. And then the process would be for the board. I think Ford's actually proposed a building committee meeting for I think it's 4/25. And then presumption is they'll vote on the contractors. We'll know the full, we'll know the numbers at that point in time. And then we go from there.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Town administrator search update. So the collection of applications closed. In total, we got 33 applications. We had a very strong group of applicants. The screening committee met yesterday, and we moved forward with the process to begin to interview candidates that we thought were a good fit for the town. We expect to conclude with the interview process by the end of April, and then have a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, probably after town meeting, to move forward with 3 of the candidates. So it was a very good meeting. It was a 3-hour meeting, but it was extremely productive. Looking at the candidates, matching those that we determined we should move forward to interview with the profile that was put together. Mr. Haviland was in that meeting. I think he would concur with my assessment.
I do.
Yeah. And the other item of business is to designate the Board of Selectmen speaker at Dover Sherborne High School graduation. Usually that is the chair, and that would be you, Bob.
Yeah, I looked at my calendar. I have that week, Memorial Day weekend into the first week in June has sailing on it.
Okay.
I mean, you deliver the commencement address.
You just give it. Yeah, but I will. Chances are I will not be able to make that.
Okay.
Cindy's retired now. Part of the gig is to enjoy sailing during the week. So priorities.
So how much will you pay me to take the place?
If I write your speech, I'm not going to pay anything.
So I did it last year. So do you want to do it, John?
I'd be happy to. It's
okay.
Remember, you get invited back if you keep your remarks under 2 minutes.
Mine are always under 2 minutes.
That's right.
2 minutes.
That's the old Morley and Morley.
Okay.
If it's short,
Bob,
it's good.
You were the one that wanted to stay on track here. So
And we are, Robin. We've actually caught up.
Mona will coordinate with the school for you, John, and give you all the particulars, and we'll let the school administration know.
Right, so I have a couple of other points that I'd like to bring up. So I had been asked by one of our residents who is currently responsible for well monitoring. I mean, it used to be the Water Resource Committee or whatever it was. Who's doing it now? You're doing it?
Who's doing well monitoring?
Yeah.
It's a Board of Health. Oh, you mean the water? Yeah, but it's done by the town and it's posted on the website every single month.
Oh, okay, because there seemed to be confusion about who was doing that. And
no, it's been done. Carl Warnick does it.
Okay.
And we actually added sorry, I didn't know what you were talking about. And we actually
I never know what I'm talking about.
Right. We actually added additional wells. We worked with Aquarian. So we have some additional readings, and Ron Myrick has also been looking at the data on a consistent basis to ensure that the collections are right.
Well, that's great. Where do you find it on the website?
I will send you a link.
Okay, that's great. Super. There was also a question about the State Water Board Rep Drought Management Task Force. Apparently, Jerry was spending a fair amount of time doing that. The question was, is
Well, he
someone going to
wasn't-
replace Jerry?
He wasn't the only one. Our town administrator was also participating in those.
Yeah, he's gone. We have an interim.
Right, so I could speak with. So the person picking up water is the DPW. So I'll make sure that he knows it's on his agenda,
Okay, that'd be great.
head of the DPW.
We've had 3 meetings on the 3 to 5 membership committee. And the goal of the committee is to answer why 3 or 5. We broke the group into 3 groups of 2 working teams. One to focus on how does Dover work? What are the roles and responsibilities of the board and the TA? One is to understand what makes Dover Dover, because if we're going to make change to the governmental structure, people want to understand what our citizens expect and require. That's part of the equation. And then the third is to set up criteria to identify like towns, so that we're not comparing apples and oranges, but towns who have the look and feel of Dover, so that Dover, so that decisions that are made reflect our interests, our values, and not what's generally going on some other place for some other reason. So the goal is to sort of have everybody come up the learning curve and be in relatively good foundational knowledge, sort of by the end of May. I mentioned this a couple of different times. I'm not sure the group will continue to meet over the summer. People have different plans, but they should be well cited to move forward in September, and be in a position to make a recommendation to town in May 24. I also want to remind people on things that I think need to happen related to moving forward with the Dover Community Center. One is we need to revoke CMAQ's authorization. There's no one working in CMAQ. CMAQ will not have a role going forward. We need to clean the books on CMAQ. So I don't know if we can vote a revocation tonight or not.
I think it needs to be an agenda item, so why don't we put it on the upcoming agenda?
Okay, thank you. The second thing that needs to be done is that we, the Board of Selectmen, need to confirm what we perceive to be the management structure at the Dover Community Center.
So I recall way back when we talked, I think we had a study done and we talked about a director or somebody looked at it, because I remember having conversations about hiring a director.
This is a series of conversations that happened last year. And so what I did was I asked Carl to send around a draft community center director job description, which encompasses what Chris and I believe to be working also with Mark and Janet, sort of best practice community center management practices back when we had that working group. There was general agreement about most of the duties and responsibilities. So the idea is, which is consistent with our view of professional staff employees running critical town facilities. So we have a community center director working who has a certain set of responsibilities outlined in the job description, working in collaboration with Mark and Janet as people responsible for the programming at the community center, and that person reports to the town administrator. And then finally, Carl reminded me that in that working group that I talked about that did the work last year, recommended 3 positions for the community center: a director of community center director, and two what do you call them? Facility people, yes. And I think that we should include that request in the June special town meeting for funding in FY24 into 20, and then we can leverage that into 25. Those things really need to get done.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the process, but do those have to be positions that get approved by the personnel board? Are they newly created?
They'd all be new positions.
So Carl, I don't know if maybe Rick can tell us what the process is.
Well, the two maintenance positions, those are existing job descriptions, so
Okay.
those would not need, but the director's position, we would have to draft up, Mr. Springer gave me what was worked on, so we'd have to basically put that in our format for job descriptions and then bring that to the personnel board.
Okay, because I
for
thought
classification.
that was an excellent description of the role, the role and roles and responsibility of that director. So I think you and Chris did a great job, Bob. I think it's everything we talked about.
Oh, we just copied Lexington, but don't tell Carl that.
Hey, why recreate the wheel if you don't need
Why
to?
recreate the wheel?
S-
So that's it for me, Robin. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know, I think these are great comments, so maybe we put on the agenda for the next meeting, just the community center, next steps, action items, and we can, I don't know if we need votes for all of these things, Carl, or maybe at least put it on the agenda so that the community is aware that we'll be discussing it.
Sure. Okay, we'll do that.
So lastly, I've heard that we're having trouble with the EMTs getting staffing during during the day. I don't know if that's true. But the question is, I don't know. I also don't know what the EMT function costs. And if we're getting into situations where we have to increase salaries in order to induce people to serve, we might want to look at options of using professional vendors to provide the service. Just as similar to what Robin, you had been talking about on the capital budget on the heavy equipment side. I don't know if it's true, but it was raised, and I
Well,
said,
there's a request for $80,000.
but I don't know what the cost is of the service. What the all-in cost is, and how that would compare to going to an outsourced vendor.
It's
Carl?
a lot more expensive, but why don't we have the Board of Fire Engineers attend our meeting? Because I think it's ultimately their responsibility. I believe, maybe not.
I don't think it is, Robin. I think it's separate, but it'd be a good point of clarification. What I was going to ask Carl is the $80,000 request. Where
To increase the stipends.
is to increase the stipend? What would the total be? So it's 80,000 to increase, and then what does that bring the total to? I don't think that was part of 2 weeks ago when we met. We had the $80,000. We reviewed the $80,000 request, but we were never told what the total is.
Sure, I'll let me send that to the board. I don't have my budget book in front of me, but on Thursday I'll send that information to the board.
So Carl, could you just comment if you know the answer, if you don't completely understand, but to Robin's question, is the Board of Fire Engineers responsible to, or is it under their jurisdiction to also have the EMTs and to make the assessment of the staffing of the EMT?
I don't know the answer, but I'll review the bylaw and send that out as well to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Robin, just 2 quick updates for me. The chief search, Carl and I had a conversation about that, moving that to the next step. We are going to meet and have a conversation with regards to the consulting group that will be used for that. The chief and Carl have been having conversations about that. There are 9 people who have made an interest in the 7 positions, which is a good thing. So I have had that conversation with Carl as well. We're going to wait until the end of this week. I'll go through the list one more time, make the list, propose the list to you at our next meeting, and just make sure everybody's vented. Give anyone else who is listening tonight, who has heard about this, who would like to weigh in, the opportunity to do so between now and the end of the week. That's the chief search. The Hale conversation is ongoing as we speak at Open Space, which is meeting right now. So I don't have an update from them because I've been riveted to this meeting this evening for watching Robin and Bob. So can't comment on that this evening, but that's my
And you're welcome.
All right, thank you, John. And so the next item that we have on the agenda is the town administrator updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just get this up on your screen. I know you have this as well. So just a couple of items that are highlighted in green to do updates on.
By the way, Carl, I did
the
like that
first is,
color green.
Well, thank you. Under recruitment, so under the category of 5, this week we started our recruitment for the HR director and also started the recruitment for the planning director position. And we're working with the planning board on that one, particularly around where to advertise, because we had a very challenging recruitment the last time we went out for a planning director. So we're trying to see if there's a different strategy on recruitment. Number 27 is next. I want to update the board on the analysis of the replacement of the roll-off vehicle. We had 2 types of analysis done regarding the roll-off vehicle. One is a mechanical analysis done by an outside firm that looked at the vehicle itself, and they raised some pretty substantial concerns about that vehicle, largely around cracking in the frame. That is that the type of cracking that it's something that's not easily repairable or repairable in such a way that it will last, for any period of time. So their recommendation is that vehicle needs to be replaced if we're going to continue to provide, use it for delivering our trash and recyclables to the different locations. And then the second study we had done was by the Collins Center to do a financial analysis for us on basically the business model of continuing to do this work in-house, using our own staff and our own equipment to bring trash to Wheelabrator in Millbury and our recycling materials to the Wellesley Recycling Center, where they take it and process it for us. And the DPW director and I had a preliminary presentation today by the Collins Center. We asked them to do a couple of other just fine tuning of some of the analysis that they did. And I expect that within a week, I'll have a draft report for the board to review.
Carl, how far back are they going to in the analysis of the way it's currently done? Like how many years can you go back to see the benefits of the town? They
were charged with going forward only. So the the cost of continuing to do it the way we are now, the status quo versus contracting it out. So we're not looking at the benefits the town reaped in past years. I know it's been over 20 years because the piece of equipment is, I think, 25 years old that we're using. So we've been doing it in-house for at least that period of time, but they did not go back up and look at comparing what it would have been in the past.
So how are they going to give you the assessment of going forward? It's just I get they're going to come back to you and say, okay, this is going to cost us X number of dollars, and it's going to cost X number of dollars to outsource. But how do we then do the comparison of, all right, what's the time value, or what's been the return on the capital of the vehicle that we have? How has that performed?
John, we talked about this last time. We
Yeah.
don't have maintenance records.
But I don't mean maintenance records, Bob. I just mean,
How would you know the cost then?
because you have the fixed dollar cost.
Well, you also have maintenance records that go into that, don't they? It's over 20 years. How much did we put into these vehicles in terms of maintenance? That would be part of the cost.
You got to know
So
that.
to me, it makes no sense. We need to, this is a forward-looking thing. Should we continue the operations as they exist, or should we change to a different platform? No?
Yeah, but the first thing you'd ask is, what you're doing profitable? What
We
if
don't know.
if I said that to you,
But you're proposing an analysis that we can't do.
yes, we can't.
Right, well, you know what? We already had this conversation last week or last meeting. We need to agree to disagree. I think we need to move forward on this.
Okay. I yes, we need to, you're correct. We need to agree to disagree. It's just going to make my head explode, but sorry, Kyle, go ahead. I apologize.
Yep, and next is item 31, the solar array over at the highway facility. So we have a tentative date for Eversource to do their work to cut over to the solar, start receiving power from the solar for next week. And the reason I say it's tentative is that it'll be a 2-day job, Eversource is estimating. And while that's taking place, there won't be power to the building. So we'll need a generator backup to keep the highway building operating for those 2 days. So that's what we're waiting to hear, is how our contractor is going to keep power coming to the building during this cutover, but it's tentatively scheduled for next week.
Oh my God. Where's the proposed generator going to go?
Well, I don't know. That's for someone else to decide. But my experience has been there's large commercial generators that they just bring in temporarily. They put it in the parking lot, run a heavy duty extension cord, so to speak, to where the power comes into the building. It's not too much more complicated than that. You may know, or maybe thinking, well, don't we have a generator for that building?
We do. We have
Which
a
we
really,
do, but
really loud old generator.
Yeah, and it doesn't power the entire building. It only powers sort of the critical functions in the building. So we have said it is not acceptable to run, just partially power the building, for this 2-day period. So we'll see we're waiting to hear back on the plan on that. On town communications, we had our kickoff meeting on Monday with our consultant, and they are now fully engaged with us on least initially, helping us to craft messages around town meeting. So that is happening.
Carl, when
Number 33, so this,
will we have will we have any type of work product from them? When will we have work product from them?
we have, as of today or yesterday, have started feeding them what we've done in terms of content. And they're reviewing that and providing work product, is to use your words, back to us.
And this work product is going to be specific to town meeting articles?
Right now, from a time perspective, that's the immediate charge. Is around town meeting, and we're scheduled on Thursday of this week to do our first town meeting e-newsletter. So a special newsletter just around town meeting. And we're hoping to would like to do 4 of those. This first one will be explaining to residents how town meeting works. Since we know many of our residents may never have gone to town meeting and they consider it to be somewhat of a mystery. So we're spending some time and working with the consultant on just explain what happens at town meeting and what's a motion and what does the moderator do, and how are votes taken and things of that nature. And then the next week will be around the financial articles. The next e-newsletter will be.
And all this will be in English, right? Not legalese, not town meeting, jargon. It'll be in actual English that people can understand.
No. They're gonna write it in the same language that the
Blue book language. We need blue book language.
That the town charter was written in 1636.
Sounds like a good idea.
Can I move on?
Sure.
May.
I apologize for Bob's interruption. So I'm sorry.
So something new, and this isn't a tremendous priority, but it certainly is something we wanted to see if we can spend some staff resources on. This 33, municipal electricity aggregation. So this was a change in state law that probably goes back close to 10 years, maybe a little less than that, which allows communities to go out to bid for power, electric power, for anybody in the community who wants to take part of that bid. So if you look at your electric bill, it has 2 components. It's the actual electricity, which may be generated outside of Massachusetts, in Canada, whatever. And that piece is now, you can now bid that. You can go out and take bids on the power generation. And then the other piece of your bill is the distribution and transmission, which is what Eversource does. So many communities, I believe close to 130, have gone through the aggregation process. And they do it for a couple of reasons. One is they can offer their residents lower prices than they can get from the Eversource standard plan or the basic rate. And secondly, many communities which have sustainability and green community type efforts, and they want to have a source of electricity that comes from green power sources rather than what you get from Eversource. Many communities will bid it that way as well. So they'll bid, tell me what it will look like if it's the same power generation type that Eversource does, which is so much renewable and then so much from traditional. Then they'll look for a second alternative, which is a higher percentage of green energy And then there's usually a third alternative, which is 100% green or renewable energy. Our regional planning agency, MAPC, will provide some assistance in that. We had a meeting with them last week. Barry Goldman participated in that meeting with us. And so they basically took us through all the steps should we want to pursue this. The first real step, if this is something the board is interested in pursuing, is town meeting. It requires a vote at town meeting to just authorize us to get it, to look into this. Doesn't require us to actually move on it, or we could go through the process and decide it's the prices aren't good enough to offer them to our residents. But you can't do anything unless you have town meeting approval. Most communities, and I've done this in the communities I've worked with, you hire a consultant that does all the heavy lifting. The consultant doesn't get paid directly by the town. They get a very small percentage of the cost of electricity gets added to your price, and that's what pays the consultant. And that's also competitive. So you sort of look at what the consultant's looking for in terms of a slight markup on the power cost per power. And I know my household participates in this in the community I live in. And while many people saw a tremendous increase in Eversource rates over the winter, we didn't, because at least in terms of our power rates, we're part of aggregations. We opted into it as a family. And so our rates were set well over a year ago for the cost of power. So it's something that at least is worth doing a little bit more work on. Mr. Goldman has offered to continue to work with us on this. And if the board is interested in pursuing this, again, the first step would be a town meeting article to authorize us to do so.
Town meeting 23 or town meeting some other time?
Well, I wonder if it would be something we could do in the fall town meeting if we had enough information.
I think we could do it in the fall or even at the June town meeting.
I don't know if we'll have all the information for the
Yeah.
June town meeting.
Yeah, the only information we really need is here's how the law works.
Yeah.
Are we interested? And MAPC has provided us with sort of that, I'll call it a talking piece, but sort of all those bulleted points. So we could move as quickly or as slowly as you wanted to move on it. If you
Well, I think it's a great idea, Carl, because I have entered into these types of conversations with companies that I'm on the board of. There's a firm on the Cape that does this. We have begun that process with that firm, and it's just what you described. You buy it at a significantly lower rate, and it also allows you to buy the power when the power is generated, when you actually, as a company or a facility or the town, we might be able to buy power when it's generated in the very off hours rather than at peak hours, right? When we're actually using it. So it really is a great resource. The decentralization of both power supply and power movement is a huge initiative going forward.
So no action at this point you need to take, but as we have time, we'll sort of put together the talking points, and it could be either the June town meeting, the fall town meeting, or the 24 annual town meeting.
Right, if it's as
if you wanted to move
simple
forward on
as
it.
you're suggesting, I would just try and get it done by the June town meeting.
I agree.
This is a win-win for everyone.
Good. And then I don't have anything really to talk too much about on, but I've added a new category 34, budget and finance related. Because a couple of things that I know are going to hit our radar screen very quickly is on the Carroll Community Center when the new bids are in and we see how much additional appropriation we may need to ask town meeting to fund. We'll have to look at a funding plan for that. How are we going to cover that cost? So I know, we'll be spending some time on probably in May on that. And then as we get close to the end of the fiscal year, we just need to look at our current year's operating budget and where we need to make transfers between departments, where we may need to make reserve fund transfers. I know already, because I've been posing this question to the senior staff, that those accounts that those departments that are paying for electricity in their budget, the costs for obvious reasons were through the roof this winter. So, I mean, not that it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's going to be, in the possibly tens of thousands of dollars for both electricity and heating oil, where we have heating oil. So it's just to get it on your radar screen, and certainly needs to be on mine to start working on that, because those transfers require votes by either the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Selectmen and the Warrant Committee. And that's the items I want to bring to your attention. If there's any other items that I didn't talk about that you had questions about, I'd be happy to answer.
No, this is great, really informative. Thanks for bringing the electrical aggregation to our attention. I think that that's something that would help all residents of Dover. I'm sure everybody experienced extremely high electric bills this winter.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. I know personally mine doubled.
Mine doubled.
All right, and the last item on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. And in the consent agenda is the vote to accept and expend Council of Aging's gifts, a vote to approve the appointment of Eurus Alexnius as registrar for a term ending June 30th, 2026. Approved September 30th, 2023 cystic fibrosis cycle for Life Ride, and approved 2023 one-day special liquor licenses for April 7th, 8th, 28th, and 29th. And I am going to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
And with that, I would also like to before I make a motion to adjourn, I would like to wish all of those citizens celebrating Easter and Passover a happy Passover and a happy Easter, if that's appropriate. And with that, I would like to say, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Came close to ending on time, Robin. Pretty close.
I know, I tried.
Hey, good night, all.
Yeah, I think tomorrow's supposed to be as nice as today. So if you didn't get out today, get out tomorrow. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Happy Easter, everyone. Passover. Enjoy the family and enjoy the beautiful weather.
And
Good night, everyone.
the hints of spring and better days to come.
Amen.
Correct.
Good night, all.
Good night.